thinking about the gap between us when we create relation. And I'm thinking about if it's something about relational grammar, because this is what Mats Trondman will talk about. And Mats had been working many years here at Malmö University, and we have been colleagues. And I've heard you many times and appreciate it a lot. And now you work at Växjö University. And yes, please welcome Mats Trondman.
Thank you. And thank you for inviting me. I have to say something about Malmö first. I moved here in 1907 because I want to be part of this wonderful city and the way it's been developing, which is great. For many reasons, I moved out of here 1.5 years ago, but 2 weeks ago I moved back again. Otherwise, I'm living in the deep forest of Småland. To like 1 hour with the train, just right into the woods by the lake. But sitting there and looking at the lake, sometimes it's beautiful, sometimes you go crazy. In Sweden we say you go wooden crazy, skogstokig, and you want to see the world. So I've hired an apartment in Malmö again, so I'm back. Which is great. Otherwise I work at Linnaeus University, which is the town of Kalmar and the town of Växjö, about 2 hours away. Basically, I'm a cultural sociologist, and I now and then do research in the area of children and youth. And we also have a research center at Linnaeus, which is called the Center for Cultural Sociology, which is basically dealing with research on most young people, but now and then also kids. But when I was asked to come here to give a lecture, I thought, yeah, I will do that. And I will do it more from, if you like, both my mind and heart. I'm a big fan of the American philosopher Martha Nussbaum, who says that we need to have a heart which is enlightened by reason, and we need to have a reason which is deeply activated by emotions. And to work with kids, you need to have both. Not only emotions, you need reason to that emotions, what they mean, what they do with you, but you also need some emotion attached to reason. To being a young person is not a question of logistics, it's much more. I haven't decided to start like this, but on the train here from the deep woods of Småland this morning, I nearly finished a new book that I started to read yesterday. This is actually one of the best books ever I come across, at least for the last 10 years, so I recommend it. It's called Our Declaration, a reading of the Declaration of Independence in Defense of Equality by Danielle Allen, who is a professor at Princeton Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton, New Jersey, US. And what this book is about, that she goes back to read the Declaration. She does a close reading of the Declaration, and she says it needs to be read slowly. So the whole book is about 1,000 words. She basically examines every word in the Declaration and tries to figure out what they mean, and especially what equality means and what inequality means. So it's a sort of defense. Of course, she knows there are problematic things in the declarations because she's herself an African-American woman. So, of course, she wonders why they say men and not women. Why those who wrote this tractatus were slaveholders themselves. What did that mean, etc. But I'm not going to give a lecture on this book. I'm going to read a little bit of the last part of it, when she goes through the whole declaration and trying to establish what equality means and what it means to be a human person, and what it means to be caught up in the course of time, be part of our time and be inactivated by that. And one of the last chapters is called What's in a Name? I guess he stole it from Shakespeare, What's in a Name? It's a famous Shakespeare quote, but she doesn't say that, but I think it is. I'm going to read to you. Normally I don't do that in lectures, but I'm going to read a little piece here because I thought this is a very important start. Every time you meet a young person, a kid, and you want to get to know them, you want to build a relationship, you want to present yourself. Maybe you want to be a challenge to them, but you don't want to threaten their integrity. You need to know them. As one of my favorite Paul Willis says, if you need to understand another person, you need to start believing them first. Trust starts in believing other people, and then you get to know them. And when you get to know them, you can start believing in them. And if you don't agree, well, then it might be possible to criticize, because then you're part of relationships where challenges is a part of friendship. But if you challenge people with critique without wanting to believe in them, don't want to understand them, but to judge them without any idea of who they are, it's very rude. So, what's in a name? This is then Danielle Allen, the book that I really recommend. I will read slowly, because she says you should read slowly. Our starting point must be that nearly every human being has a first and a last name. Or, as we sometimes say, a personal and a family name. The former is also sometimes called a given name or a bestowed name. The latter is sometimes a clan or tribal name. Different cultures put them in different orders or organize those two functions of name differently. But the basic pattern is there. Perhaps here we can spot yet another aspect of human inequality. When we call our family name our surname or last name, in reality it comes first, pre-existing us and marking the histories of which we emerge. Our first or personal name, the given name, in contrast, comes last. It's a gift from your parents, barely older than yourselves, really who hope for us a full human flourishing along our own distinctive path. Names are an ancient and core technology for acknowledging aspiration and maintain accountability. With our names, we are held accountable by others, and we take credit for what we have done. Our name fixes each and every one of us equally as creatures who aspire and can be held responsible. Whereas our last name binds us to specific traditions and broader histories, our first name marks out our potentiality to break from the past. The idiosyncratic patterns of our predecessors prepare the moment of our entrance into the world, but do not determine our passage through it. Each of us will extend the particular tradition from which we emerge in ways that our forebears can neither predict nor predetermine. Only we are accountable for our passages. No matter where one starts in life, one can, from that starting point, conduct one's life well, or badly too. It is because all human beings aspire and can be held accountable that all play a role in shaping our collective lives, regardless of how well that role is played. Every life counts, contributes to the whole. No matter its shape, no life is altogether accidental. The proposition of human equality designates a fact of human life, as well as an ideal. In signing each name on the declaration, the signers acted out this fact of equality, that each of us is allowed to aspire. That's good. That's like reading a Bible, basically, or the Quran, or whatever. I like reading those things. The idea that you have two names, you have a last name, and that's where you come from. That's your parents who lived another life. That's the culture you come from. That's the country you come from. That's somewhere where you grew up and you brought a lot of things with you. And then you come here and you also have your name of your own. And the name of your own, that's me. And you probably want to have some sort of interaction with where you come from. But you also might want to figure out, where am I? Emerson, one of the most famous American philosophers, said that this is what I am, and this is what I came for. And everyone needs to have that chance But at the same time, you need to have recognition for where you come from. I think recognition is a very important concept. It's a philosophical concept, but it means that, like in a family, the kid would know, my parents will love me because I have my first name. But of course they love me more because I also have their second name. And in a family, you need to love your own kids better than other kids. That sounds very crude, but that's the truth. You can't tell your kids, mom and dad will never, mom or dad or dad or mom or dad, whatever combination. We will not be with you that much because, we want to save Malmö, so for the sake of integration, you will not see us. No, in your own family, your own kid needs to be in the center. But when you leave that family and go out into the world to take part as a citizen, then maybe we need to talk about equality, that each and every kid with a last name and a forename is endowed with the same chances that everyone else. So as a parent at home, you need to love your kids more than other kids. But when you send them to the school, the parents need to think out with the teachers how to make that school as good as possible for all kids. So at home, you're a parent. But in society, you might want to be a citizen. And a citizen of the world need to take care of those institutions that save the possibilities for all kids with a forename and a last name to be part of that world. And as I see it, the Nightingale project, I've read about it now and then, is a part of such a project. It's a part of creating an institution where you can do these things. And it's very important for society to hold up these things as important things, like the declaration of the Nightingale Declaration is about helping out in terms of securing and equality in terms of everyone has the same worth and value to be dealt with, to have a relation with, to grow, to have their first name and become something. I think it's very important with the first name because we don't meet anyone. Those of you who are people who meet these kids, they have a forename, and thereby they have rights. Just because they are individuals, they have rights. But also, of course, they come from somewhere, so I wanted to say something about that. So first, something about recognition, which I think is important. Recognition then means that in my own family, I will be loved though I am and have a forename. That's called autonomy. At the same time, I know I'm very dependent on my family. I can't live without them if it works well. But where does self-trust comes from? Where does self-confidence come from? Where does self-reliance comes from? It comes from having a forename, being loved for the person I am, and still I have the right to belong to the family which I come from. I am someone within my tradition. If you look at young people in Malmö, I've done research here for the 4 or 5 last years with upper secondary school kids, gymnasiet in Swedish. One of the things that we've been doing, we're doing a lot of things, and I can't tell you all about it, but some things that really came to my mind very strong, doing interviews with young people in Malmö, but also forcing them to answer boring questionnaires. Sometimes you need statistics to know whether it's 10% or 75%. You figured out that about 8 out of 10 young people in Malmö with migration experiences, that's the word I've used, with migration experiences, might mean that their parents grew up somewhere else and came to Sweden, but also be that these kids are born and grew up in Sweden, but they have migration experiences. I think the concept of migration experiences is very important. Why? Because most people grow up somewhere and take part of that tradition of growing up there. The French Algerian, though he passed away too young, Abdelmalik Sajjad, who wrote wonderful books about these issues, but it was about France and Algiers. But anyway, he says that to understand someone who emigrates, who leave his or her country, if one have a country, not all people have a country, but if one have a country, you leave that country, you emigrate. And then you become an immigrant. You immigrate to another country. Sajjad's point is that you need to understand both these processes. It means that you leave something which you hopefully had belonged to, but you couldn't stay for several reasons. Your language, your culture, your friends, your relatives, your tradition, your religion, if you're religious, your politics, your life, your history. You leave something behind, which you brings with you, of course. And then you come to a new country, and there you will be the immigrant, the one who will try to find out a new life in possibly a new tradition, new language, new schools, new institutions. And his point of view is that you can't understand the immigrant if you don't want to know something about the immigrant. And you can't know the immigrant if you don't know what it means to be an immigrant. I'm not using these words here as sometimes we do in Sweden. We use the word immigrant, invandrare, and then immediately we will talk about problems. Oh, you have immigrants at school, you must be tired. Oh, you have immigrants. You know what I mean? I wouldn't call that racism necessarily, but the idea that if you say immigrant, you mean, oh, we need to talk about problem. This is you can relate this to another very famous theorician, namely Du Bois, an African-American scholar. He was the first African-American to really become very famous in the field of social science in the US. And he launched the very famous concept of the double consciousness. Double consciousness. And it was, at that time, it was called the Negro problem. It's not a word we use nowadays, but he basically lived through the 1900s and died the day before Martin Luther King said, I have a dream. Du Bois died in Ghana. But Du Bois had this idea, what does it mean to be the problem? What does it mean to be the African American in the American society, in Jim Crow days and so forth? Well, it is like moving your body and someone see you and the other think, wow, he might shoot me. Oh, does he have a brain? Oh, is it possible to socialize him? Oh, is he capable? What will he do with me? Oh, I have not to go there. No-go area. Should he really be at school? Should she really be at school? So the double consciousness is that you can't really see yourself without looking through other people's conceptualization of yourself. You can't really reach through to yourself because you think about yourself and you think about yourself through the supremacy of other people who define you in a certain way. Oh, problem. Oh, problem. And sometimes also a problem because they're immigrants. So the immigrant becomes a problem not because they're immigrants, because we construe them in a certain way because they're immigrants. For instance, I'm privileged enough to be a research fellow at a famous university in the US, Yale University. And I know the last time I was there, this African-American guy worked late at night at the law school in the city center of New Haven. And he's waiting for the shuttle bus to go home. There's been some shooting in the ghetto. Police forces is running through New Haven, Connecticut in the middle of the night. Oh, there is this black guy. They're picking him up and he says, look here, I don't live in a ghetto, I'm a law school student and I've been studying. Ah, don't fool us, you motherfucker. So they beat him up. And then they discovered that this guy was a law school student. How could he? He had the wrong color. But double consciousness always means that you have to deal with other people describing you in a way that you have to resist. There is a very famous African-American painter. His name is Horace Pippin. He was self-taught. And his painting is wonderful. And Cornel West, one of my big favorites and an intellectual in the US, he's wrote this wonderful piece about Horace Pippin. What is Horace Pippin painting about? Because the art society doesn't really get it sometimes. They think he's primitive or naive or something like that. But Cornel West's point is that he tried to paint the African-American beyond the double consciousness. They had a person singing in the crossroad, humming with others, going to fish, play cards, be a person beyond the double consciousness. Why am I telling you this? Well, if you talk to young people in Malmö with so-called migration experiences, and you get to know them, and they would like to tell you their story, you will hear a story which is parallel to this. Who is the immigrant? I have a veil, so they don't think I have a brain. I have a veil, I have to prove something. I have a whale, oh, I must live in Rose Garden and have problems. Oh, I have a whale, I couldn't go to school. Oh, I have a whale, I'm oppressed. Oh, I have... A lot of people, even in Malmö, the city that I like, deeply like, and sometimes you get these really strong stories. This is a story that a young Arabian-speaking woman shared with me. She said something like this. You know, on Sundays, I take my sisters to go around Malmö City Center because I wanted to take them into stores and we go to watch clothes and shoes and stuff. But, you know, I'm so afraid that they will have the moment. They will have the moment. Well, what does that mean? Let's see. So sometimes, before I go home to school on a Saturday or Friday, I go to visit those stores that I want to take my little sisters to, because I don't want to have the moment. They're too young to have the moment. So I go there to see if people are nice there. I always try to behave nice myself. So I went to this shoe store and I thought, most people there were really nice. I think I'll take my sisters there on Sunday. So she takes her sisters there on Sunday. And while they're looking at shoes, the one who works in the store says, are you going to steal them now, hey? And then Aisha said to me, I've called her Aisha when we write about her. Aisha said to me, Mats, I did something very stupid at that moment, and I'm ashamed of that. But I felt I needed to say it, but I'm ashamed of it, but I needed to say it. I would like to go back and say sorry to the lady, but I don't know. I was so afraid. I was so angry because my sisters got the moment. The moment when you suddenly become someone else, but you're not. And she didn't want to have the double conscious move into their minds. She wanted them to know that Malmö is a good city, and most people in Malmö would not do these things. But the moment is there, and you can never be sure whether there will be a moment where these things happen. And I said to Aisha, so what did you do, Aisha? I went up to the lady, and I felt very proud and strong. And I said to her, if you got the same grades as me in school, you wouldn't work at the shoe shop. Then I took my sisters and went out, because I wanted my sisters to have that moment too. They needed that moment too. It's just a great story. To show how civilized people could be with the name of Aisha. Not a terrorist, a civilized person. Try to be civilized in a moment of the moment. Most young people in Malmö struggle with this. They want to be the good person, they want to represent, they want to be respectable, they want to show that there is something else. So more than 80% of young people with migration experience says they want to have in terms of identity, they want to belong to the tradition where they come from, but they want to have a little quarrel with that tradition and they want to change it partly. They also want to belong to the Swedish society, which most of them really like and aspire to be part of, and wants to be a part of, and wants to respect, but they want to change it a little bit too. So what they're struggling with is a double belongingness in which they want to change a little bit of both parts. They want to change a little bit of a Swedish society so they can be the person they think they are. Here I am, that's why I came. And also they want to tell the parents, hey mom and dad, I want to be in Sweden, I'm Swedish too. So they want to have a double belongingness, and most of them are struggling with these things. And sometimes in Sweden, I think the politics have moved that way. Politics have moved towards the idea of assimilation. Well, what does assimilation mean? It can mean a lot of things. It could mean things which is defendable, depending on what we mean by assimilation and what it was meant by 100 years ago in Chicago, in US, or whatever. But in an idiotoppic way, in a very simplistic way, assimilation basically means the following. You're allowed to be here, but you need to have your own culture at home. And when you come out to the Swedish society, we have the right to turn you into people like us. That's the three logics of assimilation. It is a form of incorporation. We're not saying we're going to throw you out. We're saying you're allowed to be here. But if you want to be here, and if you're a Jew, or a Muslim, or whatever you want to call yourself, or what you think you are, you leave that at home. No Jews on the streets. No Muslims on the street. No Jews and Muslims in the street. I say this because I regard both of these people as very dignified people, basically. You know what I mean? So you need to stay with your Jewishness and your Muslimness. You can stay that at home. And then you come to our school and we will make you into proper Swedes, whatever that is. I think for a reason of political philosophy, this is a very rude way to treat people. I mean, we Swedes, 1.2 million Swedes left Sweden from 1840s up to the 1920s. These people, of course, most of them are not alive anymore, but maybe they ended up in Minnesota, and they called the town in Minnesota Malmö. There is a town of Malmö in Minnesota. I haven't been there, but I have a friend who went there, and people there, when they see Swedes, they sort of, yeah, Sweden, yeah. They speak some sort of old Sweden, and immediately they will talk that they still have Christmas traditions that their forefathers used in 1843. And then Swedes will cry and think, there's Swedes over there in Minnesota, and they have Christmas pudding. Well, we don't have Christmas pudding, but they'll have a piece of bread. They will cook the ham in a very fat sort of, it's just fat and water. And they will take a piece of bread and dip it into that and think that's the best thing that happens every year. And we think about it and we think, oh, what a great thing. They went there in 1843 and they still stick to the tradition. Makes me cry. Real people, solid, deep down in the soil where they came from. Yeah. But that fucking Kosovo Albanian in the door next door, making his awful sausages stinging through the... He's been here for 6 months. Can someone tell him? I'm rude now, but I'm just trying to show that Swedes, whatever that is, I'm one of those who get tears in my eyes when I get to know that in Minnesota they say, yeah. And they live in Malmö and then have a Christmas pudding. And they want to keep their language, Hardly any Swede would say, what are you doing? Stop doing your stupid things. You've been there since 1843. What are you up to? You must be stupid. The traditions are very strong. Doesn't mean that I think that you must stay with your tradition. I'm not saying that tradition must be always defendable completely. I'm not saying, I'm just saying that if you have a last name, you have something with you. And if you want to get to know someone, you need to believe in order to understand. And you need to understand in order to believe. This is what one of my favorite cultural sociologists, Jeffrey Alexander, talks about as a multicultural incorporation. It means that you are a quality in the terms of the person that you are, and we welcome that quality to take part of the society in which we live. It might change you, it might not change you. It might change me, it might not change me. But if we allow each other these things, then we don't have a problem, because you're allowed to be like me, and I'm allowed to learn from you, and I'm allowed to be partly like you, and I'm going to... So let's see what happens then. Sometimes you end up in a sort of hyphenation in between. I'm an Arabian-speaking, Swedish, something. And I think I'm both. And we can also show in research that young people at secondary grammar school who feel that they are respected for what they are, they do better in school. Why do they do better in school? Well, it's quite basically, think about yourself. You come to school and say, well, if you're going to be here, you can't be the person you are. So go home and throw that in the bin and come back, and we'll turn you something else. Oh, thank you very much. I will immediately do that. Then, of course, there are young people who long for assimilation too. I think we need to be pluralistic. Maybe 5 or 10% of people with a migration background want to leave their background and turn themselves into something else. So some of them also aspire for assimilation. 5 or 6% of them would not aspire for neither a multicultural incorporation or assimilation. They want to stay the way they are and try to hide away so they can't get in contact with this Swedish society. So there is a variety of strategies that you can choose, but more than 80% of young people want to be part of both, and they want to partly change both. And why that will end up with, we don't know. And that is a nice thing. As they say in the Declaration, in the course of events, trusting human beings, with institutions that help them out trusting in the course of events, we don't know what will end up. And that's nice, I think. So we can show that people have better health if they be treated like this, and they will do better in school. Of course, they have to get it, they are recognized. And since they are recognized, they can be students like everyone else. Of course, there are other things that are very important here, but I think the thing is, and I'm now going to be a little bit personal for a little while here before I move on, because I'm going to talk about learning and kids and the ways we society has changed. And I think for me, this was a very important message about multicultural incorporation. Of course, someone could say, well, then don't you believe in individual rights? Do you think people can keep the tradition the way they want, etc.? No, I'm saying that it can only be done if we have a shared vision. I have the right to be, you have the right to be, we have the right to meet, we can develop. If we don't hinder each other, then we can learn from each other. And then your guard will go down. And then you will not have a double consciousness hindering you. Du Bois had, before leaving this, a vision. Like Martin Luther King had a vision. And the vision was that turn the double consciousness into a second vision. Another way of looking at it. So if you can feel like, I'm not going to be offended by those words that are getting towards me, I'm going to understand those words that are hitting me. And I'm going to stay dignified in the face of these experiences. And we're going to turn these into resources. This is what I am, herefore I came. And I will learn, and I will use that to become a respectable person, showing that in the face of this, I'm not going to be like that. Which sometimes in my field is called to self-confirm your own exposure. To self-confirm your own exposure. That is, if other people are treating you like dirt, you will become dirt. If you do that, in your station, in your nation. I like beer bombs and dance. Yeah. I'm not against hip hop. I was listening to The Roots this morning. It's now or never, gotta get my shit together. Yeah, it's a good message. It could be said in a better way, but it's good. I'm not going to be an animal treating life like a mechanical. I'm going to go down. It's now or never. Gotta get my shit together. It's very important. You don't need to have migration experience to deal with that existential question. It's up to all of us. Even I have to get my shit together because I'm giving a lecture. And there is some strength here in who am I and what should I do with myself in the face of other people's supremacy. So second vision is important. To be with young people with these sort of experiences, I think we need to have this dialogue and give them a second vision. Show them other possibilities, that the world is not black and white, it's all these things. And don't self-confirm. Don't agree upon becoming the person they eventually want you to be. Don't ever do that. Try to figure out how you can. Because self-confirmation is what the racist wants. They wanted to say, I know how Arabian-speaking people are. And look there, I was waiting for the bus and 3 guys came up and I saw what they were doing. That's what Arabian does. I know now. It's proven. It's called empirical proof. I saw 3 guys. So now we know everyone is in Poland. Of course, we can say that that's not a real thing. That's why statistics is important sometimes. But they have seen it. I went on the bus and this happened. Now I know. Now I know who they are. Because I've seen it. That's why it's important to dare to talk about self-confirmation. I'm a big fan of Martin Luther King. And he knew that he dared to say, you have to say these from the inside. It's very stupid for me as a white person in supremacy or in power to say these things, but I need to say them. Martin Luther King said, or you might say them from the inside, he says, we need to educate and reform ourselves too. We need to educate and reform ourselves too. Saying this doesn't mean that the whole responsibility is yours, but it needs to, how can I avoid self-confirmation? How could I, in the face of, get a little space here where I can show something else? We need to help the kids, to help them to do these things. It's very hard to talk about, it's easily misunderstood, but it's important. Let me be personal for a little while before moving into the next area. When I was 5 years old, I didn't know this. What I'm going to tell you now, I didn't know until 3 years ago. When I was 5 years old, I went to a kindergarten in my hometown of Kalmar. It's a town on the east coast, southeast coast. 3 hours from here on a train going east. I hardly remember it, but how did I know? When my mom died, I found a box in the wardrobe, a box. And in that box, she had placed all my grades from different schools that I went to. On the top there was this piece of paper saying that her son had become a professor, which was for her completely impossible, basically, because she comes out of 9 generations of basically farmers that didn't own anything. In Sweden we will say pigor. It means that you don't own land, you work for free and you get some food. From 9 generations back, from the same part of Sweden, those who know Sweden, a little place outside Nybro in Småland called the Malmö. And there is like 8 houses in a crossroad. And for 9 generations, my mom and her mom, they were these sharecroppers or something, but rather working for the sharecropper rather than being the sharecropper. Farmers helpers, that's the word, thank you. And then the son becomes a professor, that's pretty, how is it possible? And my mom was always afraid that I would go crazy, because she had this idea that you have a brain, you don't have a brain, and how do you know that you have a brain? And if you don't have a brain and you do it, you might go crazy because your father went crazy and he didn't even study. So what will happen if you study, So she had these really hard things to deal with. But anyway, obviously this was important for us. On top of this big thing was this, okay, I became an academic. But in the bottom of this little box, there were another formula that I had never seen before. And I can't hardly remember going to this school, but I went for 1 year when I was 5 years old, which means it was 1959. I went to sort of preschool experiment thing in the folk home of Sweden, down in a basement. And obviously, when that experiment was over, we got grades. There were 6 grades, and I'll tell you about 2 of them, because they take me into the next phase of this lecture. The first was whether the teacher thought that the kids had capability of learning, inlärningsförmåga. And I got the next to last grade there. So after one year in my primary school basement in my hometown, the teacher had discovered that I lacked capability of learning. It says that. I didn't like the worst grade, but the next to worst grade I thought. So when I was 5 years old, I figured out that I didn't have a brain, and I lacked the capability of learning. The other one was even more scary. I have to say it in Swedish first and then try to translate it, because I don't know really how to put it well. But in Swedish it says, graden av naturlighet. How natural you are. The grade of naturalization. Not normality, but naturalization. The level of how natural I was. I had a colleague in Nashville, Tennessee. His name was Richard Peterson. He unfortunately died in a heart attack not long ago. But he studied country music and also blues and stuff. But he loved to say like this: Mats, don't ever try to act naturally, because you will immediately get lost. This idea, if you say to yourself, I'm going to give a lecture and try to be normal, it's very hard to be normal, because you try to look normal and you don't look normal at all. So don't act naturally. I don't know exactly what it meant, but listen, here I got a big A. So when I was 5 years old, I was completely natural without a brain. One thing makes me happy here, thereby I couldn't be a psychopath. Because they're supposed to be very natural, but they're supposed to be smart. So maybe I was saved there. I was just stupid and nice. No, I don't exactly know what this means, but thinking back, then I'm not bitter. I don't want to kill my teacher or something like that. I first started thinking, why did she do this sort of interpretation of me? Why did it have this picture of me? And I would say that maybe empirically, in terms of description, she might have been right. Why might she have been right in this description? That I didn't have a brain, or I lacked the capability of learning, but that was natural. Why? Because probably I grew up, it was supposed that my mom should take care of me, but my dad, because of his life, I will not tell him his whole life story, he was a very problematic person, troublesome person, because of social issues and psychological issues, and maybe neurological as well, I don't know really. But he was basically quite crazy. And my mom basically married the wrong guy. Happens too often. And she couldn't get out of it. So she was forced to put us on a course and try to save me while handling him. God bless him. So I grew up because he couldn't work. And mom was, this sort of well-behaving culture. You should be well-behaving, no one should know. She went to her mother and said, I need to divorce, this man is crazy. And her father said, yes, he's crazy, but the mother said, you can't divorce. Why? Because my grandmother didn't know who her father was, and her grandmother killed her own 2 kids in 1879. So there was also this whole sort of thing of, don't tell anyone, don't tell anyone, don't tell anyone. Quite common in Sweden in the 1600s, 1700s, that women killed their kids, basically for poverty and other things. So there was this culture of don't tell anyone, don't make yourself seen, hide away, don't take any place, My mom was always afraid, seeing on television, she wouldn't go out for 3 weeks and stuff like that. They would think, there he goes. Someone could know. So my mom had to leave home and start to work, and there were no other way to deal with it. So I grew up with my crazy dad for 5 years, he and I in a box. And I don't know much, I can't remember much from it, basically. It might have been some good things happening there or bad things, I don't know. I don't have any memory of it, basically no memory at all. So when I came to preschool, 5 years old, I probably lacked a lot of competencies, probably. And also probably I was, as I still am, quite narcissistic, because that's the way, how do you survive as a kid if you have some sort of talent for social issues and social relationships? How do you survive in a world that you can't control? Well, you can self-confirm and be like your dad and go crazy. Kill him or someone else or something. Or you have some sort of idea to create this distance. No, I'm not going to be like that. I'm not going to be like that. You create a distance in your mind. And then you're trying to be clever. Some sort of emotional IQ will try to deal with this craziness. So that's why my mom told me that I was always nice. And I always asked him about the things that he liked. So I never asked. I learned to ask what to do. So I survived by being very competent in social communication. That's my mom's story. I think it's true. I still suffer from that. Though I've gone through therapy, I still suffer from that. Like the light bulb, the narcissistic Mats Trondman lights up when you see some crazy person. For many years I worked as a musician, and all the other musicians they thought it was so funny. Wherever we played, we could never go home because some crazy person came up to me and wanted to talk to me. And then I talked to them for 3 hours and the others didn't get home. That's why I went into therapy. I want to say no and go home. So maybe these preschool teacher did give a proper description. You know what I mean? He doesn't know the things that other kids knows, but he's so nice. So biggest grade in being natural, lowest grade in capability of learning. But empirical descriptions might be real, but you need to interpret them. You need to understand them. How come? We have this situation. And I think what this PE teacher did, which was wrong, and I'm not going to blame her for that, it was also 1959. Well, you could blame her. If you read more books, she would have understood that it was wrong as well. But probably she went to school and learned certain things. If she'd really been studying, she would have known that was wrong at that time, too. But I don't need to feel bitter or want to kill her or hope she is in hell or something like that. Probably she was a very good person. I've even found a photo with the whole group in 1959, and I'm the one who's sitting in the knee of the teacher. So probably I was taken care of. She didn't hate me. I was this little sort of no-brain, narcissistic little cute one that you can take care of and cuddle. But probably you got a lot of care. The best thing, of course, is care and cognitive capability. But probably you had a good time there. So what is my trouble with this description? Well, I think there is a trouble here, which I think still is an issue for us, and we don't necessarily think about it. And this is how it goes. You know, capability of learning is not what you know. It's about what you can learn to know. That's a very important distinction. So what my pre-teacher did wrong and didn't understand was, of course, that she recognized that I was lagging behind the others in terms of what I didn't know. But then she drew the conclusion, since don't know these things, I was not a cultural lag, I had the wrong brain. She thought the brain was finished, and you had it or you didn't have it. Now we know, I think, I've read a lot about these things. This is not my research field, cognitive psychology and stuff. It's not my field, but I try to read a lot in that field, and I will come to that later, because I think it's important when you work with kids. Is that the brain is not finished, it's growing, depending on what happens outside. So we have social interaction that ends up as biology, and we have biology that ends up as constraints and possibilities for social relationships. That's what I've learned reading these books, but it's not my field. And I know they might fall on certain things, of course. Basically, I would probably argue that probably not everyone can, become a world-famous professor in abstract physical theory or something like that. But that's not really a societal problem, is it? I mean, if everyone became a person like that, we would have a problem. Though it might be good that some more would do that than they do now. You know what I mean? We should have forced them to do police to do something else, like be preschool teachers and take care of kids. So my point is, it's very important to make a distinction between what you know at the moment and what you could learn. And that's one distinction. The other distinction is how the brain can develop by learning to be capable of learning. Because basically that's what happened in my life. Things I will not go on talking about my own life. What happens in my life is that I met a lot of good persons, basically. I met a lot of good persons. Who saw that I had a forename and a last name and trying to do something. And these were people in sports. These were people in music schools. These were people that were my friends in the neighborhood that I grew up. These were parents to some of these kids that I grew up with. And so forth. There were other people. In terms of theory, we would say I was lucky enough to be in an environment where there were significant others that I could relate to and that awakened me. Though in school it took some time, because when I ended up after my gymnasium, my grammar school, I promised myself never to open a fucking book for the rest of my life when I was 18 years old. So it took some time to discover that I really want to do that. But it's a long journey, and I will not go through it. But I can say it's so important with significant others. They don't want to take you as an experiment to force you to want to be with you. They want to believe in you because they want to understand you. They want to understand you because they believe you. And there will be time when there will be relationships, and you will turn them into authorities in a positive way that I can relate to and learn from, because they want to be with me, and they recognize me, and I still have a name, a forename. This is what I am, therefore I came. It's very important to see that in kids. So this experience has made me start to read things that have to do with cognitive stuff, and I came across something that I think is very important to talk about. And her name is Carol Dweck. I've been in contact with some publishers that think that we should translate this into Swedish, I think. But her name is Carol Dweck. I must just ask something now before I go on, because I can't remember. I stopped at 11. Yeah. Okay, thanks. Carol Dweck is obviously now retired, probably still active as a researcher. She wrote a very interesting book. I think it's her way of summarizing 30 years of research on kids and learning. And the title of the book is Self-Theories. Self-Theories. She also done a more popular version of the same book that you can buy in an airport sometimes. It's then called Mindset. But I stick with Self-Theories. She's been trying to understand basically what happens in small kids' life when they discover that I am a learner. I can learn and I want to learn, and that some kids very early on discover I'm not a learner, so I need to stay away from this. You can talk about patterns of being self-controlling or patterns of helplessness if you like. She has very complicated words sometimes, so I'll stick with very basic words now. But first, self-theories. What does he mean with self-theories? She says that kids very early on try to develop a theory of themselves by themselves, of who I am, identity, if you like. That's why it's interesting also in identity as potentiality. How the story of myself can be something that I can use to move on and understand things. Reject double consciousness and see a second vision. Try to understand that I can become capable of learning, and etc. So one self-theory will be like, it will be helplessness. It will be like, if you talk to a young person, they might say things like, well, I'm not good at learning things, and I think I'm not that smart, and then I don't want to do it, because if you're not smart and you do it, then you will be stupid because you know you're stupid, and then you don't want to do it because then you know you will be stupid because you are stupid, so then I don't do it and I hate school. But don't you do anything? Well, I like cats, and I want to write about cats, but you're not always allowed to do that, and I think it's wrong. I'm making this up, but just get to know a feeling that you have this self-idea that you have to reject these things because you're stupid, so why should you do it? You probably prove that you're stupid. So you need to avoid. On the other hand, that's one side of the continuum. I'm trying to do anything I can not to reject learning because it's going to show that I can't do it, and then I just feel bad, so stay away from it. On the other side, you have the other way around, of course. Well, I think I can learn that, but I don't know because I haven't done it. But if you do it, I think you can learn it if you do it. But sometimes it could be hard, but then you have to try and try and try. And then I try, but sometimes you can't do it, but you can do other things. And then you can do those things and you can try, and something's easy. What shall we do now? I want to check out. 2. So basically you can see that with a pattern of helplessness starts with a self-theory that I'm not the one who can learn anything. I'm not capable of learning because my brain is finished, ready, made, so then I have to stay away from it. And then I become angry or sad or get out of school or whatever. On the other hand, the brain can change and you can become other things, maybe not everything, but you have to try and you need to be focused and then you have to try and try. These are extremely important skills, and the mistake that my PE teacher did, of course, was that she thought I was helpless and didn't have a brain because that was proven when I was 5 years old. So thank God that there were other teachers coming into my life, otherwise I've been sitting in an evening cuddled when I was 32. Maybe not, she might have changed herself. That's possible. She was not an awful person as far as I understand. But she didn't get this. And that is why I think one of the most important things in getting kids to awake themselves is to have this story going on all the time, so we help them with their self-theories of who they are. So they don't self-confirm the helplessness because they don't think they have a brain. And remember, if you go to ourselves, sitting here, it's easy for us to say, I can see that I have those kids in school, I have those kids in school, I have a mix. I remember someone who changed. I remember those that I couldn't change. I didn't reach out to them. I lost them in 3rd grade, and now I heard they're not doing well. You can have all these stories when you talk to teachers, of course. The big stories of big change, and, wow, what a story. But also sad stories. I tried, and lost her in 2nd grade, and now I've heard that's sad, but what should I do? I tried. But the thing is, if we go to ourselves, it's easy to talk about kids and we think, yeah, I can see those kids in front of me. But what about if we see our own self-theories in front of ourselves? I normally use this case because that was also a case for me. Let's say if I ask you, do you play an instrument or sing, or do you deal with music? Do you deal with music? No, the grown-up says. So why don't you deal with music? Would you like to hear me sing? I don't think so. So why? I'm completely, amusical. So how do you know that? I know. My mom and dad too. So you never sang at home? No. Why should we sing at home? We're completely amusical, all of us. I was told I had an uncle who played a harmonica or something like that, and he was crazy. Had problems with alcohol and stuff. So no, music, no. But how do you know it? I know. You want to hear. But have you practiced? No. So why didn't you practice? Because I'm not musical. How do you know? I'm telling you. But if I give you a guitar and I strum it up and I tell you where to put your fingers, you start very basically with harmonies. So here is the guitar and there are 6 strings here and I've strummed it for you. If you put that finger down, that over there, and that, and don't touch the others. Oh, it hurts, yeah. It's first time. And then we try to count with that. So we just play, this chord is called G. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Can you see? You have a sort of a basic verse for a pop song there in G. I woke up this morning and my baby was gone. I know that's not music. Yeah, but that's how it starts. If you then move your fingers down here, you will get another chord called. And these 3, G, C, and D, that makes a harmony. And if you go to A minor, you want to have a song where the leaves are falling, you are crying. You need E minor. So you go from G, C, D, and then to E minor. And the autumn came, and I went fishing, and my baby was gone. I was thinking about you, and the leaves were falling down the river, watching the river flow. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I can't do that. No, of course, why can't you do it? You have taken G, C, and D, and back to G, and basically that's a pop song. If you have E minor, you will have Hungry Heart by Bruce Springsteen. I met her down at a Kingston bar. We fell in love and I knew it had to end. She took what she had and ripped it apart. And here I am back in. Everybody's got a hungry heart, G, E minor. Everybody's got a hungry heart. Everybody. That's 4 chords, and you have to count to 4 and change every time you say 4. And if you change them even quicker, it's called a riff. Do 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 do. You really got me. You got me so I can't sleep at night. Do 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 do. You can hear that with Metallica on YouTube. It's basically a King song from '63 called "You Really Got Me," which they stole from African American blues and turned it into a pop song. And then Black Sabbath's Tony Iommi heard that song, and then it was called heavy metal. It's basically all blues and pop. So it stole music and turned back by industrial working kids in Birmingham and Wolverhampton in the Midlands of UK, who now turn it into a museum in Birmingham, call it the land of heavy metal or the roots of heavy metal or whatever. So these people have become iconic. Ozzy has become iconic, but Ozzy knew he was a scum when he grew up. Just came out a new book on Black Sabbath last week, and the verse sample is, these guys knew they were scum. They were the working class kids on the lower level of the States. They didn't go to school and want to have a PA system and a heavy rock and roll guitar and sing about the devil and turn the cross upside down and show the world who they are. These things is happening all the time. When I grew up, it was the Kings. For me, it was the Kings. Kings came to Kalmar Folkets Park in 1967. I was allowed to go. I thought this is just unbelievable. Really, guys from UK comes to Kalmar to play. And we went home and discovered we had the wrong dresses on, I had those clothes on that my mom told me to have. And suddenly you have a teenager culture. And then you can move on. If you move to the suburbs today, it's more like you move like this. Yeah, these are my brothers, man. In your station, in your nation. Killen trodde han var cool, hade en pistol. Jag blev kramad av honom som kom det på en konferens i Stockholm. Men bara för att visa att de här sakerna händer hela tiden. Sorry, yeah. I was back in Stockholm. These things happen all the time, you know. Who am I? You're in a specific context, you have certain experiences, certain things happen. So when I see the hip-hop guys in the suburbs, I think immediately about Kings, though they sound very different. It's just a matter of time. Some of them will sample. You really got me, yeah. And then bring in a girl to sing the chorus. It will be here. That's the Eminem trick, of course. But these things are happening all the time. You pick up something that you can work with to create an identity of potentiality in the times you live. And these things happen all the time. But we also want them to, I'm traditional in that sense. It's very important to also learn to focus, to learn that I have capabilities and to develop those capabilities. And then they need to meet people who don't treat them like with a double consciousness perspective. Oh, you must have. Oh, you're stealing those shoes now. They need to meet people who see them as someone who could be multiculturally incorporated, with passion, with beliefs, with strength. I want to be with you, etc. So we need to move more kids from the helplessness, of course, to the possibility of concentrating. And I'm very traditional in that sense. If you look at some of the relatively new research in education, science of education, you will find that one of the most important aspects of making it at school is what nowadays are very often is called non-cognitive skills. Because now I've talked about cognitive skills, are you with me? Develop the capacity of learning and not reject that. Because a lot of things today are rejecting the development capable of learning. So they reject it, and thereby they will be cultural lagging of some knowledge, and then they will give up, and then the results on PISA will be not that good in Sweden in terms of mathematics, because mathematics means you need to be there, you need to concentrate, you need to listen, you need to believe in yourself, you need to have good instruction, you need to have someone who believes in you wants to be with you. If you develop a pattern of helplessness, feel that people don't want to be with me, they have an alternative method, I'm a resource, you can call me if you need me, I like people. Now they need strong adults who want to be with them, listen to them, challenge them, even be angry with them sometimes, as long as the heart is big. Because you will be angry if you love someone and it doesn't work out, you will be angry. But of course you need to do it in the right way. You need to show that sort of passion. I'm here for you, I'm not going to give up. I'm going to hold on. I'm going to be here. We're going to work together. You know. So we need also to challenge the way sometimes that you've been in a relationship. So non-cognitive skill means that people who start to go to school, start to listen and start to work, nearly all of them will do better. You can have whatever thoughts about pedagogy or participation or democracy or identity that you want. I can accept a lot of them. But if that doesn't turn out into a possibility of self-discipline and concentration, nothing will come out of it. Whether you want to write a heavy metal song about demon fly tonight, or learn about grammar, or the history of the French Revolution, or where rivers flow, or climate, or whatever, doesn't matter if you want to sing the blues or want to learn about grammar, you need to concentrate and learn and listen. Sometimes people think that, oh, it's only school, you need to be concentrated and listen, but they're fooling themselves. You need that in all areas of life. If you don't do that, you'll be nothing. If you like clothes, you will spend a lot of time being very concentrated on clothes. If you like cars, you will be. If you like guitars, if you like art, if you like hip-hop if you like, whatever you like, and you be good at it, you will be working. So I don't think there is that big difference between Marvin Gaye or the Roots or Birgit Nilsson who sang Wagner, because they all worked on it. And if you have Birgit Nilsson to sing hip-hop, it sounds incredibly stupid and bad. And if you have the Roots to do Wagner, it would not be good at all. Because they haven't learned their trade. They learned someone else's trade. Fine. But you need to know the grammar within that trade. That's how you do these things. That's how you do other things. So what we learn is that non-cognitive means you need to focus. I'm not saying that this is the big explanation, but it's an explanation you can't get rid of. If you don't come, if you don't listen, if you don't work, nothing will happen. When you say these things, you sound like you want to moralize. You sound like an old jerk, becoming conservative and want to moralize. But that's not my point here. My point is that it doesn't matter what you want to do. If you want to be an anarchist turning the world upside down, you need to concentrate and get the others to bloody keep their mouth shut while you're talking about it. You know what I mean? The issue of concentration and focus comes to everyone. So even if you believe in a disorderly world, you want others to listen to you talking about a disorderly world and the credits of that world. This issue comes to everyone. So what we can find out in Malmö, because what we've been very interesting, and I want to use the last couple of 10 minutes or so to talk about that, we're trying to learn something in Malmö, what happens when kids who didn't do very well in school at first, then turn around and change into school achievers. Some of my colleagues don't like that you study school achievement because it sounds so stupid because you want to be critical. I don't have anything against critical theory. I was raised in the Frankfurt School of Critical Theory for 10 years, so I know what they're saying. But I've come to disbelieve that, as Charles Mingus says, one of my big jazz favorites, Charles Mingus says, Mama too. Mama too. What does he mean? If other people eat nice food, my mama too should eat nice food. Mama too. Why should mom eat shit when other eats good food? Mama too. My point is, wherever you live in Malmö, you too need a good education. And if you call that oppression, I don't agree with you. So we need to dare to talk about school achievement. And then you find that one of the things that all kids turn around do, they start to work, they start to come, and they start to concentrate. Thereby, I think I haven't explained why they didn't do that before and why they're doing it now. But I think you need to dare to say the basic ground level is, if you don't come and concentrate and work, very few things will happen. I'm not saying it in a moralizing terms, I'm saying it, if you like, in a sociological or educational terms. That's the basic. So let's say you want to be an alternative pedagogue, you criticize society. Well, you need to come and concentrate, otherwise you wouldn't understand the alternative. Well, I'm into Michel Foucault and I want to deconstruct this regulation in the governmental. Yeah, fine. What do you think Foucault did? Jesus, he studied like 15 hours a day, 7 days a week. He nearly killed himself in the archives. What did he do? He came up with discipline and regulation and governmentality. How did he do that? He worked like hell. Sorry. He worked like hell. He was not on his sofa having a drink, and then suddenly a book came out, and then there were 32 books came out. Oh, he went to work every day, all the time, studying, reading, doing stuff. So this question comes to us all. So we need to dare to discuss that, and sometimes we need to say that to the kids, not in a moralizing, patronizing way, but in a way that's just completely, because that was the elite tell their kids. The elite tell the kids that. Mom, how can you become a doctor? You have to study like hell. Yeah, you have to study like hell, and I did that. You want to do that? Study like hell. Mom didn't lie on the sofa and had a drink, and then she was a doctor. I'm not saying that doctors are the best people in the world. That's not my point. I'm just taking the case of a status occupation. Why they focused? They worked. They didn't watch like Paint Factory 8 hours a day, and they didn't go to Who's Fucking Who in that program. They took their school books and they studied. That's why they became doctors. Sorry. Sometimes we need to say these things because that's what the elite does. If you only have the other kids, you can't fool them around. You have to say these things. It's very rude, but I think you need to say these things. You need to talk about it. So why should Malmö too? Malmö too. These kids too. Is it easy to do these things? No. I've been a high school teacher for 5 years myself with kids from migration backgrounds in the factory town of William.Trondman in the late 70s. I got all the kids that all the other teachers didn't want to have. And they give all the lectures to me and call it, it's very important we have this all-over view of pedagogy. Yeah, I know. That was hard work. So I'm not saying that this is easy, I'm just trying to say these things. Now, we started out by asking 1,000 young people in Malmö who just started their gymnasium, we say in Sweden, after compulsory school, 9 year compulsory, basically 10, they go to the next place, which is not compulsory, we call it gymnasium, which is not a sport arena. And we asked 1,000 of them to answer some questions in the questionnaire. There were a lot of questions, but the idea is we have been following these 1,000 kids for 3 years. So we did a questionnaire in the beginning, and then in the end, and in between, we've been doing a lot of interviews and other stuff. I can't go into all that, but just to start out somewhere in the last couple of minutes, we started out by asking them in this questionnaire, some of the questions were like this. If you compare now after 2 months at the gymnasium and you compare to your junior high school, junior high school, do you think you're doing better in school now? Doing much better? Doing a little bit better? Doing about the same? Doing a little bit worse? Doing much better? And we figured out, this I think is very, very interesting. It's very simplistic, empirical description. But basically 80% of them said that they didn't deliver the same thing now as they did during högstadiet, junior high school. So 80% have started to change more or less their school achievement after 2-3 months in the gymnasium. Why am I saying these things? Just it shows how changeable things are. Only 20% said that they were about the same. So obviously a lot of things is happening. Or you can say a lot of things can happen. Most of them, it was much more common that they answered, I'm doing much better now. That was much more common than saying, I'm doing worse now. So, but this is not a story where we're critiquing junior high school. I'm not going into that because the time is not. So I'm not telling this because junior high school, that's their fault. That's not the point here. But I'm not going into that, so I'll move on from here. And then we asked them in this very basic questionnaire, if you're doing much better now or worse, how would you explain yourself that this is happening? An open question which people normally just jump over and tell you they hate your questionnaire. But in this case, basically 90% answered this question, probably because it's nice to tell a good story. But basically also those who were angry did. So this is how we started out, because we want to figure out if you have 1,000 young people, different backgrounds, different schools, different programs, and you see their achievement trajectories over time, it's nice to start with, And basically then we're focused most on those nearly 300 who said, I'm doing much better now. So we asked those, how would you explain that yourself? And what you do as a researcher on the most basic level is you categorize. You look at all these answers they wrote there in the questionnaire, and you say, can I put them in different categories and see what it is. And basically 4 categories came out that has to do with school. And most of them said things that has to do with school. Because if you think, most of them would not change their lives outside school within 2 months at the gymnasium. So obviously, a lot of things did have to do with happen in school. So I think we need to have a distinction between condition of existence outside school and then school condition of existence. And try to figure out what is the autonomy or conditions of existence that comes to schooling. That deals with or despite of the fact that the life looks like outside school. The most dominating answers from these young people, 16 to 17 years old, was issues that has to do with relationships with other youngsters. Basically, the most common answer went something like this. Sometimes they are so clever when they give these answers, and I can't be that clever when I translate them. They become very flat. But something like this. well, I came to this school, hadn't thought much about it, but shit, most of them were studying. And I think I have to do it myself. I did it, and oh, it went good. This is, of course, why segregation is such a bad example. If more and more kids go with more and more kids who learn to be helpless, don't have any strong identification with schooling, and don't think teachers should bother with their lives, whether they're good or not. And on the other hand, on the other schools, more of those who are not helpless, but end up in another school, then of course, and the kids know these things when they're 16 or 17. So some of them also do this on purpose. I went to that school because I know you can study there. There were other variations of the same answer. One is like, I discovered that my friends were not good for me, so I've changed friends. Or, I discovered the friends were not good for me, I still stick with them because they're my best friends on the leisure time, but I've learned to say, I'm not going out with you tonight because I'm going to study. And they've learned to accept that. It has been some problem, but they learned to accept that. There are also individual stories, very touching individual stories about, I've always been alone, haven't been with anyone else, and I felt very bad about that. But I've always tried to go to school, at least from the junior high school and upwards, because my grandmother died. And then I got some money, not a lot, and then I made this tattoo. And that is just to remind me of my grandmother, because she wanted me to go to school. So every morning when I wake up, I don't want to go to school, but I look at that tattoo, and I know she wants me to go, and then I go. But then something happened. I got a friend, her name is Agnes, and she had the same problem as me, I think, and we started to talk. And we get to know each other. Now we have 5, for there are 2 boys also. And every morning we call ourselves, and so, are you coming? No, I'm not coming. I'm going to kill you if you don't come. And then they come. And then we go to school together, and we try to focus very hard. So even we have boring teachers. Some of the teachers are really boring. But even if you have boring teachers, we said to ourselves, we're going to study anyway, though they're boring. And if you do that, you can find that some of them can be happy, and then they're good too. And then we study, because we before we go home, we study, like we should learn all the teeth. So on Tuesday, we took all the teeth down here, and then on Thursday, we took them up there. So on Sunday, we went to have a cup of tea, and I never had that with anyone else before, so that was the best day in my life, where we went to have a coffee and tea and so on. We were staying there the whole day, and then we didn't work because we were talking, because everyone was happy. And then we said we have to work, and then we worked, and we took teeth both down and up. And then on Sunday, I studied over midnight, nearly killed myself, and then, I got a VG+, which means you got a B. I got a B. And I said, what do you learn from that? You need to study. Yeah, you need to study. But you can see here, yeah, you need to study, but they need a lot of energy to get you into that mode, to get over the helplessness. This is my best story about coming over helplessness. This is again Aisha. We wrote a whole article about Aisha. You can probably Google my name and Aisha, and the article will come up. It's an international journal. It's called For Aisha, because we learned so much from her. So we use only one person, but we tell the story about all the others. But it's called Aisha and Identity as Potentiality. He tells the story that he said, that first when I came, I was so afraid of math, so I didn't go to the math class, because it was no idea. I'll take that later. But sometimes I need to take care of my life. I need to do something. This girl is from Roscoe. You don't have to be to Roscoe and think like that. You can be from 10 other areas in Malmö to think like that. But she did. She's now in a nursery school, as far as I know. So she's going to be a nurse. But anyway, she says that I was so afraid of not having the brain enough. Like she was reading Greg. So I avoid math because that would just bring me down, and then I wouldn't have any energy to do anything else. So I stayed away from that. And they told that the teacher there was really sort of, very powerful and a little bit of angry, and I couldn't stand that. So I stayed away. So, but how come that you mobilize yourself? Yes, he said, because at that program I went to, there was this subject called medicine. And everyone said, medicine, that's the hardest subject of all. It's even worse than math. And you need medicine because otherwise you can't get a job at MAS, which is the hospital, the big hospital in Malmö, the National Health System in Malmö, MAS, Malmö Sjukhus. You need to get the course on it. So what did he do? I was thinking like this. Think how clever Aisha was. She said like this. I thought like this. No one had studied medicine before. So then, of course, everyone is an idiot. She said idiot. Förstår du? Ingen hade studerat medicin. Alla var idiot. Everyone was an idiot. Yeah. So I thought, if everyone is an idiot, you can start from the beginning and see if you have a brain. So if you go there, you go to have a lecture, you do what the boring teacher says, you write everything down, you study over midnight. You study over midnight. And she got a B+. Then she went to math. She got a C or something like that in math. Yeah. So sometimes these kids, to get over the helplessness, they need to be a situation where people want to be with them, talk to them, challenge them, be happy, all these things needs to be there. But they also need to end up with concrete evidence when you can counter-proof their experiences of not having a brain. You can put like 10 special pedagogues there, they wouldn't come to the lecture for that sense. But they need to come because we want them to be there and to recognize them, and then we need to challenge them, and then we need to put them in situations, in concrete evidence, when you can counter-proof. Because none of these kids want to fail in school. It's a big study out of Princeton 2 years ago called Kids Don't Want to Fail, which is about exactly that parents don't want the kids to fail, the kids don't want to fail, but if they end up in helplessness, that it looks like they want to fail, and the resistance to dare to try is so strong that you will have a strong counterculture. So what we basically are saying is that you need a whole school culture. I mean, sometimes someone told me that a wise woman, said you need a village to raise a kid or something like that. But my point here is that we need a school culture. And by school culture, I mean a whole symbolic structure that is carried by the teacher and the school. So when you go into that school, you feel that whole structure. It doesn't make every kid faint immediately and then go on to become someone else. It's hard work. It's hard work. But it needs to have certain things. It needs to be a recognition there. It needs to be okay to study. It needs to have teachers who are good in terms of knowledge and pedagogy, who want to be with the kids, who believe in their possibility of learning, who work together to create an environment where you step in there, you feel like, shit, they like me and they want to study. And you need to have the kids on your side, because if you have school culture like that, that's teachers and kids. You can have very good teachers doing a very good job, but if the horizontal doesn't work with you, it doesn't matter. So you have to win the horizontal to support the vertical. And you have to do it together. Everyone will not faint within a week. But we can show in terms of statistics and interviews that if you have a school culture who lives up to 10 of these expectations, 60% of the kids will do better in school. Now life is complicated. Some kids are doing better in school that don't have anything of these things. Because some kids are very strong and they move on. Others have these things and still it takes a lot of time. So I will end up with a last little quote from a kid, from a dear friend of a colleague of mine, whose name is Anna Lund, who writes about a school in Malmö that really deals with those kids who haven't made it anywhere. But now they need to start all over again. And she's been in a class where they turn a lot of kids around. And it's wonderful to see how they use, how engaged the teachers are, how they believe in the kids and how they challenge the kids, but also a lot of humor, laughter. So I end up with this. There was this little Ahmed, who's hardly been to school for 3 or 4 or 5 years, but how he comes to the school, after a couple of months, he's discovered, maybe I should start to study. And they turn him around. And he becomes more and more focused. He goes to every day when he goes home, he cries out to his Swedish teacher. His name is Emma. Her name is not Emma, she's called Emma. Emma, can't live without you. I promise you to be back tomorrow. Sorry. That's wonderful. I'm going to be back. I'm sorry, you've got to deal with me. You've got to get rid of me. And one of the most beautiful quotes is when he's having English. And suddenly he used, the eraser. He used the eraser. And Emma came up to him and said, Ahmed, what are you doing? He said, I'm using the eraser. Haven't done it since 5th grade.
Thank you, Mats.
Thanks.
Thank you. just want to give you a present. Something from the Nightingale and some chocolate you can eat on the way back on your train. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. You have the possibility to ask question if you want to ask Mats some question, because we will now have a pause, and I will tell you first. You can take an apple or fruit and talk to each other about the lecture, or if you find any words. And I want to tell you that we have people here coming from so many parts of Europe, from Norway, north of Norway, Finland, Iceland, Sweden, different parts of Sweden, Austria, Switzerland, and even Uganda. And we are very happy to have you, 3 persons from Uganda today. And if you want to speak to them, because they also working in a teachers' dialogue, and it's very interesting program. So you have only 15 minutes now to talk to them or talk to each other, and then you will have lunch later. But before you go, I think we have to think about all the things that Mats have told us and listen to poesh and just let it melt. And then we will have the pause.